Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
April Collins.
Hi there.
And Alex Bonilla.
Hello.
Today we will be recapping the first two episodes of She-Ra Season 2, The Frozen Forest and Ties That Bind, which dropped along with the rest of the season on Friday. Warning. Please listen. Warning. All of us have seen Season 2 in its entirety. We will be discussing these episodes and how they interact with the rest of the season. So spoilers, spoilers, spoilers for everything in Season 2, but especially these two episodes. So yeah, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to.
Are there going to be spoilers in this podcast?
I don't know. We're going to find out. We're having a disclosure.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
She-Ra is in
Can't be
this
held
episode,
accountable.
you guys.
What?
Shira and Dora.
Surprise!
Whoa.
Yeah.
She-Ra! Okay. She-Ra has
Yes.
dolphins. I just had to say it. I just had to say it.
Spoiler.
Wrong episodes, but I just had to say it. All right, you can find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes. You can find us on Spotify or on YouTube at youtube.com/overlyanimated. All right, guys, let's just start out. I just want to get your general thoughts on these two episodes. Did you like them? How did you feel when watching April go?
So, these episodes were, I feel bad for saying that they were just kind of okay for me. It's not that I didn't enjoy them. I just, like, for the first two episodes or even just, like, the first episode of a brand new season, I thought I would get, like, so much more. And it was just very, like, I felt like I was watching Miraculous Ladybug, if anyone else is familiar with that, or if that's a good reference. Like the first season where every episode was like the same and like nothing changes, and like you can watch the first episode and the last episode right next to each other, and they're like there's not any difference in between and you would never realize it. So it kind of felt that way. That being said, I thought that there were some great sort of like one-liners, and like I won't lie, like the first "Hey Adora" like totally got me, and I was like, yes, like, and then and then even like the "Hey Catra" back, like I was all in for that. But no, they were good, and just like I don't know, I just thought I would get more out of them, but I enjoyed them.
Gotcha. Alex, how about you?
I'm half on April's side because I do think Frozen Forest falls into that category of like, well, you could insert this anywhere. Like, obviously we need to set up the Princess Alliance in season 1, but like now that that's been set up, I feel like you could put this pretty much anywhere in the rest of the show. But like, it's fun, it has its moments, and so like, it's certainly not a bad episode by any means. Now, I will say, I really enjoyed Ties That Bind. I think that actually has an argument for being one of the better episodes of the season. One of the best episodes of the season, even. Maybe it's because I love Entrapta and I love Glimmer, and like that episode had a lot of them, and it had a lot of emotional moments that I wasn't expecting going into like that kind of setup. And even the Adora Swiftwind stuff, like it's the weaker part of that episode, but like I do think that at the end, like it gets to a place where like we dig into Adora's character in a way that we'll dig into later in the season as well. But like here, it feels like a nice, it feels like a meaningful climax. So I think that Ties That Bind is like a good example of like what She-Ra does well in terms of like amping up the angst when like this stuff goes wrong and like digging into characters' anxieties. Like the Ties That Bind does that really well. The Frozen Forest is like, you know, more like the fun action stuff, and we do get those moments to a lesser extent. So I think that's fine. But like Ties That Bind, I think is an episode that stands out to me.
Gotcha. Michelle, what about you? Where do you fall?
I liked both of these episodes. I mean,
this is great. I love that I went
in
this order. Yeah, I love I went in the order. I was like,
Yeah, no,
yes.
it's increasing hype as you go, right? It's like you knew. Because both of these are very character focused episodes, and like for me, seeing all the other like princesses fleshed out a little more, seeing them work together as a team, getting stuff with Frosta and Glimmer, such like a nice surprise. But like I love that we have that. Like, the only thing I wasn't crazy about was in episode 2 was Swiftwind being, like, kind of really obnoxious, which I did not expect him to be so prominent this season, for one thing.
Well,
like, he's part of the council. Like, what the heck?
I mean, you say prominent, but, like, he's old. This is his episode, and after that, he kind of disappears.
Again.
I just feel like he, like, goes on more adventures. I'm like, why are you here? But I guess, like, she reads. But, like, even though, like, I agree with Alex, like, I was more high on episode 2 just because, like, there's a lot of Glimmer stuff. We get into Cadra's anxieties. Like, there's more Scorpia. And just, like, honestly, I enjoy seeing the quote-unquote bad guys as much as the good guys. Like, I love how much we get to switch back and forth between them being in the Horde and seeing the rest of the Rebels. So I was I feel like this... It felt a little like season 1, but like a revamped, more like dug into season 1. And I'm like super for that. And I feel like that's a good place to lead off of, because we are kind of like recapping essentially like, all right, so some time has passed and now there's some new tech bots and everyone's working more together. Like, I appreciate that, because like for continuity in the story, it makes sense that we kind of have to touch base on this again before we went on like more separate adventures. So I really like them both.
Okay. I don't know where I fall. I don't know if I fall more with Alex or with April, but I'm not as hyped about these 2 episodes either. I will say I think part of the reason is because, and for anyone who was in the speculation podcast, you experienced this with me. I had to watch these clips from WonderCon, and one of them was mainly from the first episode, and I feel like, just having watched those clips, I got the essence of the episode. Does that make sense? I just was like, oh, okay. That's
kind of like whenever a trailer gives away the entire movie kind of situation.
And I'd rather they give away the first episode than the rest of the season. So I'm like, I understand why, but I do think if I had just gone by those scenes, I was fine. And I also have issues with the bots, but we'll get into that. And same with episode 2, I was like, well, I appreciate the character moments. I agree that there is a lot there to dive into in terms of character and what we learn about these characters and where they are at mentally. But also, we have Swiftwind, which is worse. I don't know. I'm like, the other ones. There wasn't anything particularly bad of episode 1. There wasn't anything bad, well, except for the bots. But like, I would take faceless bots to obnoxious Swiftwind any day. I have a higher negative reaction to Swiftwind. I'm sorry, Swiftwind. I am. Okay. So, but let's go into episode 1. Let's talk about the frozen forest. So we start out with these horde bots that are attacking the woods, making it impossible for the princesses to heal the defrosting forest. Catra is using these bots as a diversion tactic so the horde can advance elsewhere. And we see, as mentioned, that the princesses are struggling to work together as a team. And we see some really interesting team dynamics. We see Frosta and Glimmer. We have this reintroduction of Frosta, because before she wasn't really a character. Now we get this introduction of her personality, which is really interesting. We get Perfuma and Mermista hanging out and doing stuff. And we also have Bo acting as the tech guy of the group. So I was just interested in what you guys think of these dynamics. Like, what stood out to you from whether it was Frosta, whether it was Mermista, whether it was everyone? Like, tell me, what did you like best about this team dynamic?
I was going to say, I like that it seems that I guess, like, almost everyone is on the same page, I guess. Like, it's kind of nice to see them all going out as a group versus, like, doing a lot of... I mean, it would make sense for, like, Glimmer and Adora and Bo to, like, sort of go out on their own, like, separately. But I like seeing the whole group together. That being said, I think that Frosta was a little too much. And I think they played too much into the fact that she is, like, a lot younger in theory compared to all of them. And I think that was like a little bit of a disappointment to me, because whenever we're first introduced to her, like, she is such a strong, like, character, even for as young as she is. And then, like, we get to this episode, and I think this is probably where, like, my issue with the episode lies, is that she's acting so childish. And I was like, wow, what happened to that very strong, like, young lady before? And now we have, like, this child that's just doing whatever she wants and not listening. And, like, I understand that she's also, like, I guess, queen, or, like, I guess, queen, princess of her kingdom. And so she's been in that position for a long time. And so it's probably hard for her to like have to take command from other people. But like, I was just like, wow, you're really over the top right now. Like, and then I also didn't, I guess like, I give Glimmer like more credit too, because I was like, oh, like I expect her to sort of handle this better. And then she kind of blew up and I was like, oh, come on, Glimmer, like, you're better than this, and I know that. So, but I love Perfuma and Mermista. I think they go along great together.
Much to Mermista's like chagrin.
Yeah, but it's also nice because they use their powers like in conjunction with each other too. So that seems to sort of like flow naturally for them, and I like that part. Like with all of the members.
Gotcha. Yes, Alex?
I want to stand up for Frosta and Glimmer because I agree that Frosta it maybe takes too much of a turn into the childishness and like, you know, just being very hyperactive through most of the episode. But for me, it gets saved with that ending conversation. Instead of like twisting it to like just the childish behavior, it's more of like, well, I want to be your friend. I want to know how to help, and I've never been in this kind of a situation where I'm around other people. She uses the words, I've never had friends before, man. And like that's something that it's like it's very relatable in that way of like when you're in a social situation, like you see people being very active around you. It's like, I got to be active too. I got to like contribute somehow. But like sometimes in that process, you go over the line and you are maybe like become too aware of what you're doing to like take into account the boundaries of the other people in your group. And so like that conversation felt very mature to me. And like Glimmer then like being like, well, I also had to learn how to be a good friend. That was a process for me. And you also remind me of me in terms of like being dangerous. And we've seen from other episodes that Glimmer is still like that. Like, especially in episode 2, like we see that she like lets her emotions take control of her sometimes, even still. So like, that's always a process. And like Glimmer now that the sister / mentor relationship that this episode is setting up between Frosta and Glimmer, it, like at least as like a foundation, it felt very, very real and very earned to me. Now it's a little hurt by the fact that like in the rest of the season we don't really see them interact again. Right. It's about at the same time we know that like it's a half season, so like it's possible that will be touched in the next batch. But like I wish there was more Frosta and Glimmer to build on what this episode ended at, because it definitely feels like the setup for more interaction in future episodes that we just didn't get so far.
Yeah, I agree. There is definitely you definitely feel the very sharp cutting in half of the season with like the things that are established. Yeah. Michelle, tell me, what about you? What stood out to you of this new team dynamic?
I mean, I also agree with all the Frosta Glimmer stuff. I mean, and for me, I think it's also
who do you agree with April or with Alex? These are very different things.
I mean, I agree mostly with Alex. I mean, I think the added, like, I buy that Frosta, she's fine at being kind of like a stern, mature queen when she's on her own little slice of the world and has to be that mature. But when she's like suddenly on this team where she's actually the youngest, I think like that allows a lot more of her, and not in a bad way, but just like immaturity come out. And like honestly, like I was the youngest child. I haven't dealt with a lot of kids who were younger than me, but Glimmer kind of like trying to navigate how to like not be super mean, but also try to get away from this really excited person who's younger than her. Like, man, I felt for her. Like, I don't know how I would deal with that either.
Gotcha. Yeah. For me, it was, I didn't have that much of a problem with Frosta. I just wish instead of like an 11, she was a 10. Does that,
maybe
just
then.
Still excited, still the same thing, just slightly.
Yeah, and I agree with Alex, too, that, like, that moment at the end is very nice and very mature. But then again, like, probably, like, what hurts it, too, is that because later on in the season, we don't build off of that at all. Right. Like, and especially because, like, I'm coming off of, like, no joke, like, my third time watching through these episodes. So, but, like...
So many ice puns to go through.
Oh, my God, yeah.
You're not wrong. But that's, I think that's the thing that, like, as I watched it, like again, and then maybe even once more, I was just like, wow, like this would have been so much better if I had if there had been more payoff to it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Not that I'm not upset with it. It's just that I just wish that if we were going to spend the time on something, that there would be more of it later.
Yeah.
Especially when we only got half a season.
Yeah.
So I feel if you're going to spend time on something, make it worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's no fault of the show, the crew, because that's more on just how Netflix and DreamWorks decided to distribute the show. So that's just kind of, it's a criticism, but it's also it's something we can't, there's no way to fix, because I feel like ideally they'd want the entire season out, not have it split in half. But yeah, what about Bo? Bo, we have takes up this new role as the tech guy, and we didn't really see that in the first. I think it was mentioned slightly in the first season. We talked about it a little bit in the reaction podcast. But what do you guys think of Bo taking this on? Were you surprised? Because I certainly was. I didn't remember that he had shown interest in tech.
Yeah.
Well,
I
didn't
remember. Being super infatuated is going to be the word that I use. It's probably not correct, but he was just fangirling out whenever he met Entrapta and everything like that. And
that's true.
And so then whenever they brought it up, I was just like, oh wow, that's perfect for him, because he already had an expressed interest in it and everything like that. And so I thought that was I thought it was very nice for him, that he was gonna explore something that he has been wanting to do. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think it's an extension of him finding his place as the tactician of the group. Glimmer and Adora have the power, and so he's left to be the person who deals with strategy and with in this case technology. That moment where he gets frustrated, I'm supposed to be the tech guy and I'm not helping here, but then Adora comes to comfort him. It's no, you're the one who actually thought of a plan. We were just gonna keep fighting no matter what.
Yeah.
You stepped in to give us an alternative, and that deserves praise. And I really enjoyed that moment. You get not just accepting that he is in that role, but also recognizing it out loud and giving him the needed support that he deserves in that position. So I think that Bo being tech guy is something that does get touched upon a couple more times in this season as well as in previous seasons. So it just feels like an extra thing to build on that side of his character.
Gotcha. Michelle, were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I mean, Alex just covered it. So, it's a double whammy, right? He's tech guy, but also he's a strategist, which they desperately need, because they need somebody who's able to think more big picture than, what's the immediate problem happening right now? But being able to actually make connections and be oh, but if we do this thing, then this other thing can't happen. Those are both pretty important roles, and I feel Bo fills those shoes for both those roles really, really well. So I appreciate April saying that you'd remembered that he was fangirling about April. I mean, about
I would fangirl over me too.
In the first season, and he did he made those sonic arrows. He has all these trick arrows, and I'm inclined to think he probably made those himself, right? Yeah. Those were a tool that he developed. So yeah, it makes total sense that his role would be expanded. Plus, now that Entrapta's firmly on the Horde side, they need somebody on their side who's, maybe not equivalent, but at least can figure out some things.
Right. Competent enough.
Yeah, competent enough to be their tech person on their side. So I really like it. And I think it gives Bo a lot to do, which again is a joy to see, because he's a very charming character.
Yeah, he is. I love Bo. Okay, well, speaking of tech, we do get, well, I'm going to use that to transition into Light Hope, because while this is happening, we get Adora training with Light Hope, and it's a very interesting kind of sequence, because we get a lot of things. One, we get Light Hope actually as a character who is very funny. She has buttons too. She understands Adora totally. We also get Adora admitting herself that Catra's in her head. She's aware of the influence Catra has on her. And because Catra's included in the simulation, she's like, why did you have to make her so mean? And it's well, she is mean. So it's okay. And she's struggling to control the sword. She's struggling to control her power. We learn here that it's been a month, that she's been training for a month with Light Hope, and she hasn't really been improving. She's been struggling. And we kind of are starting to get the hints of that Adora is bottling up a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotions about just how much pressure she's under as She-Ra. So I was just curious to see, like, what did you guys think of kind of, at least, is this something, because we do see throughout the episodes and throughout the rest of these batch of episodes, we do see them start touching upon, like, Adora being stressed and then being reassured by everybody that it's okay, that we're together. Do you think this is something that's going to continue on to the rest of the episode, to the rest of this batch of, like, her struggling to handle this pressure, or are we actually going, or do you think it's like we've covered enough with this batch, or do you still want to see more of her kind of just not handling the She-Ra title that well?
Well, we already kind of saw her, I guess dealing with it. I don't know if that's the right word. But like dealing with it in season 1, like handling the pressures of the She-Ra and her sort of like taking on that stress. And so it sounds terrible to be like, oh, I'm really happy this character is suffering, but I'm glad that it's carried over, because it was never really resolved in the first season either. And so to see it sort of carried on into this season is, I guess, nice, like that we didn't just abandon that part of her character, like, and that we're like, it still makes her extremely relatable too, which is probably like a good reason to have it, is because, like, you know, like who knows how they would handle like being in that situation. And so it makes obvious sense that like she's stressed about taking on the role, but then like dealing with like her relationship with Catra and everything else that's going on, like that's a lot. So I don't think that it'll probably, like, I think we'll still continue to see it. But I think in the end, like, it's just going to make her that much better of, you know, as She-Ra and then as Adora herself.
Gotcha. Alex, Michelle?
I'll say that the first season, it kind of focused more on Adora's feeling of inadequacy in the role. Like, I'm not doing as much as I could be doing. But, like, this season is kind of shifting it more to, like, what happens if I use the powers incorrectly. And in this episode specifically, like, Light Hope is saying, like, you have to learn to master your emotions or you're destined to repeat the mistakes of the last She-Ra, Mara. And we like keep hitting that thing in this episode and in the next episode and in the rest of the season, of like, she has these emotional connections to her friends, and her biggest thing at this point is just to not hurt them. But like, she feels that anxiety of, well, if I use my powers wrong, I'm going to end up hurting them. And that's something that I am afraid that I could very easily end up doing. And so I don't think that that's resolved in this batch of episodes. And it's something that we still need to work into. Obviously, we have moments like episode 4, I think, where like she like lets it all out in the group. And then the group is like there to comfort her and like let her know that they're behind her. But like, that's still something that she needs to work out internally as well. Her anxiety, her feeling that she may end up hurting people in the future, or just repeating the cycle that Light Hope has told her has happened the last time that a She-Ra existed.
Do you guys think that we have yet to see Adora fear the powers? Because that's what it is. She's scared she's scared of what she can do. And part of me is thinking, okay, this inability to get the sword to do what she wants, I feel like they could have really grappled in on having her be scared of that and have her. I don't know. I feel like even though we get it's very obvious that she is struggling and she's very anxious about these things and about not wanting to be Mara and not making the same mistakes. I feel like there's just this element of this anxiety, this fear element that we haven't really touched upon. Do you think that's something that we should touch upon? Do you think like that she doesn't necessarily fear herself? It's more just, it's less a fear and more just stress.
I feel like it could be both. I feel like the episode, especially the second one, has really pushed more the stress angle of like, well, I have all this responsibility, it's all on me. And also like I have this really firm example, Mara, now of what I don't want to do. So it's not just that I have to be a good She-Ra, I can really not be a bad She-Ra, because that's already happened and it was terrible. But I think it actually would be really interesting to push more on the fear angle, because like it is a lot of power. And I mean, it's a lot of responsibility, but it's also like a lot of like actual like I mean, like, I don't want to say magic, because, like, I know, like, Bowie was saying, like, well, magic and science aren't that different. I don't know what to call exactly She-Ra's power. Probably more magic than science, but it could be both. But, like, that in itself is, like, kind of really scary, and you'd think that would be kind of a thing that would change her sense of herself, at least. But, yeah, I don't think the show's really explored that too much. I, like, am so sketched out by everything we've been told about Mara, though, from Light Hope. Like, right. I feel like we cannot trust anything Light Hope. Like, besides Light Hope, has anyone said anything about Mara? Because, like,
what's her name? She's
Raz.
Raz. She was very positive about it. She was like, "You look just like Mara." Like, and she thinks she's Mara.
And she probably worked with her. Yeah. Yes. So, like, that's the thing. Like this issue of, like, the unreliable narrator, I feel like there's a lot Light Hope isn't telling her. Right. And all she's focused on is getting her to be, the strongest, most capable version of She-Ra that the hologram envisions. But, like, the fact that she's rebuilding this light tower, and Light Hope even says, like, oh yeah, it used to be really easy for me to have more power until Mara went crazy and destroyed it. It's like, I feel like there's more to the story. Maybe you were doing something sketchy and she had to dismantle it for, like, the better good of everyone. Like, I legit think that's a possibility.
Like, there's a reason why she did it.
Totally.
Maybe like, Light Hope was just driving her crazy, and so she's like, I can't, like, this can't be a thing anymore. Like, I don't want this for myself. I don't want this for anyone. So she just destroys.
Mara, like, found out something about the plan of She-Ra, maybe, or, like, the plan of the first ones, and she's like, yo, that's terrible. Like, I can't do this anymore. And Light Hope was like, oh, like, you're turning against us. You must be crazy and evil. Well, that's how you're going to be remembered now. Yeah, like, for sure. I feel so, like, the more we get into this stuff, the more I'm like, I want Adora to find out everything, because obviously there's more sides to the story. It's gonna be complicated than that.
And that's the thing, right, with Light Hope, that, like, in the last season, like, at least she gives off kind of a villainy vibe, because the thing that she's instilling in Adora is cut off your connections with these people. Like, you need to focus on saving the planet, not people specifically, cutting off emotional connections. And that's just kind of the opposite of where Adora is right now. And if it continues that way, you wonder, like, is that a situation where, like, Mara was in a similar situation where she had connections that superseded her quote responsibilities to the first ones, and that caused conflict. And that's why Light Hope in this episode is focusing on that, like, master your emotions. Like, you got to take down Catra. Like, you got to, like, cut off that part from you.
Yeah, stop caring about people. Caring about people's a weakness. You can't do that. Be a good She-Ra.
What if she's like, she's using, like, these training sessions to, like, I guess unbeknownst to Adora, like, cut her ties with, like, the people that she cares most about. Like, I mean, because she's just like, oh, well, you have to, like, make sure you can take out Catra. Like, at one point in her training, is Light Hope going to be like, okay, well, like, what are you going to do if Glimmer turns on you? Like, that would be terrible.
So you mean to tell me?
I wonder what Light Hope would say.
So you mean to tell me that the character named Light Hope is gonna be evil?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. What the twist?
I'm just saying, Shadow Weaver's
original name was Light Spinner.
But then when she went full bad, she switched to Shadow Weaver. I'm just saying.
So, like, Light's not a safety.
Oh, you're right.
No one is safe. Okay.
No one's safe.
What if we like anything? Well, to be fair, we only know her name is Light Hope because she introduces herself as Light Hope. What if, like, we find somebody else who knows her? It's like, nah, her name is Dark Despair.
I mean, that's fair, because, like, they were like, yo, you were called the Evil Horde, and then Adora was like, wait, who calls us the Evil Horde? So that's fair. That's happened before. Okay, well, moving on from that, we also get From the Horde side, we get Catra and the Horde sending upgraded bots, Emily's kid sister, to the first one, to get first one tech, because they've run out of it, so she decides to send them to the beacon to go get stuff. And Entrapta describes these bots as, quote, they have enough power to rival a princess, unquote. That's not true! That is not true! That was not challenging. This is my biggest issue with this episode, is these bots are just faceless, like, animosity. These are faceless challenges that have no real, I have no real investment in. These fights have, like, for me, are like, have no worth in terms of emotional investment. They're just, it's boring. I thought it was boring. It had no stakes. And I'm just curious, like, how, one, do you guys agree? And two, like, what else could they have done to make this to actually make me care about this like little skirmish in the forest? Because I don't know. I was just like, what? There's nothing really challenging. At least with, for instance, when we get the whole things with Light Hope, when we get these interactions with the princesses, there is something there because we're learning more about these characters and stuff. And I guess maybe that's what we're getting from these bots is a vehicle so that these characters can interact and get better at their dynamic. But at the same time, I thought, couldn't there have been a better way? Maybe throw in Lonnie and Kyle and had them go on like on a mission, and maybe then we not only do we get to know about these characters that we don't get that much about, but then we have some sort of emotional connection to both sides and interactions that are happening, not just this kind of crazy one-sided fight against what is a glorified wall of metal.
we gotta save Kyle for the season finale.
Yeah, Kyle and Lonnie, I would honestly like to know more about them, but I think maybe part of the issue is like, so like you got what, like 25 minutes per episode. True. You can only flesh out and devote time to so many characters well, and I feel like they picked a side and they decided we're mostly going to focus on this handful.
Yeah, especially like for the first episode of the season too. Like, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to. I mean, like Kyle and Lonnie were already introduced, but it doesn't make sense in the first episode of the season to like focus on them anymore. And I really do like, as like, I guess as terrible as it is, like I really do think that like the bots were just a vehicle so that the princesses could, one, not like just to like demonstrate that they're more than capable of taking out whatever Entrapta throws at them, but also like I think that's the other thing too. Like, they sort of really underestimated like all of the princesses by sending out 4 of those bots. They were just like, yeah, like one bot for each princess, and it can absolutely take out one. And it's like, okay, you're only thinking in like terms of one princess. Like, they're a group. And so I think that only further establishes that they're a united front versus like, you know, this princess is over here and then that princess is over there. Like, you have, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like solidifying them as a unified group and a unified front against the Horde and whatever it is that they could potentially throw at them.
I guess. I think for me, the biggest like insult is the proper word, is that you had Scorpia, Entrapta, and Ketra on a couch watching this happen.
I love that.
And that was fun. I guess
Yeah,
I would have rather, if they were gonna have them, I would have rather instead using that scene to have some sort of I felt like they could have done something better or done something more with that scene where maybe like Ketra, while maybe Adora almost gets hurt, and then Ketra like kind of freaks out a little bit if we're gonna go that way. Or maybe it's like a thing with Entrapta, where Entrapta sees these princesses almost get hurt, and then she kind of freaks out a little bit, and I'm like, well, is that something that maybe a little tidbit of what maybe is to come? I just think they could have done something more to give a little bit more substance from the Horde side of things, because at this point, it was just, yeah, we'll just give them robots while we take over the rest of the planet. And I'm just like, well, show me the rest of the planet then, while you, instead of just showing me you guys sitting on the couch. Is just my opinion, because if you're gonna animate this, I'd want you to animate, you know, it's tedious. I want you to do things, not just have them in a very stationary position.
I think the other thing too is that what this episode does, like, it kind of makes sense that I guess that they're going to be sitting on the couch, and I understand like that's super frustrating because you want them to be out there and interacting with each other. But I think what's nice about like the end of the episode is that, one, like we sort of get a little bit more into like what's going on with like Catra's side of the story, like by her visiting Shadow Weaver and like her prison cell and all of that. And so that sort of like helps set that up. But then also like when you go into episode 2, like that's when we get a whole lot more of like the character. Like we get more of like Catra, we get more of Bo and Glimmer and everything else. And so even like Scorpia we get more of. And so I think that like it's okay that they were sacrificed in the first episode as we go into the second episode.
Gotcha. Yeah. Speaking of that meeting with Shadow Weaver, this is going to be the first. This is like kind of this introduction to these kind of meetings that Ketra and Shadow Weaver have, and this is the first one. What do you think of the show using this kind of technique to showcase the progression of Ketra's storyline and like where she is mentally throughout the season? And, you know, what do you think of this very messed up relationship with Shadow Weaver that we saw established in the first season, but it's very much continuing to this one? Because Ketra went in to blow up at Shadow Weaver so she can get herself pumped up to continue, which is not healthy. Not healthy in the slightest. So
it's not just that though.
Yeah.
It's like Shadow Weaver points it out, just like, why are you here? You're a force captain. Don't you have better things to do? And she's like, oh, it's about Adora. Like, she gets it. Like, Ketra has very limited people she can actually that she actually knows who, in her own weird way, like, trusts. And for better or worse, Shadow Weaver's like literally the only other person right now. I mean, Scorpia would love to be that person, but she's just not there yet with Ketra. So I think like she visits her because she still has a relationship with her. She visits her because Shadow Weaver also knew Ketra and Adora and knew what their relationship was like. And she also is like kind of still feeling out, like she feels good about Hordak right now, but also like there's a lot she doesn't quite understand. And Shadow Weaver's the only person else who's like had that job that she knows of. So I feel like it's multiple things going on, but like she's gonna just pretend like, oh yeah, like I'm here to puff myself up and like to make sure that you're miserable. I don't really think it's about that at all. It's way more about just like her own stuff and like thinking about Adora. Yeah. So I think it's super interesting. Like, I'm not a fan of like it for Ketra's mental health, but as a reoccurring device, I think it's like one of the best things they could have done for Ketra.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
The other thing too is that I guess it's sort of nice, and again, as much as I hate to say, I love seeing characters suffer. It's sort of like nice to see, especially like as we continue on to like the rest of the season, or at least through this first half of it, is that we get to kind of watch Ketra deal with her relationship with Shadow Weaver, and sort of like, I guess, address it, because we got that in the first season with Adora, and how Adora was just kind of like, what, like, this is dumb, like, why, you know, like, why do I care what you think, like, I don't need you, and all of this stuff. And so it's nice that we're gonna see Ketra kind of like work through those own like through her own messed up relationship with Shadow Weaver too, because neither one of those relationships was healthy. And so it's nice that like Adora got to work through it, and so it's even better that we get to see Ketra do it too. Though I agree that it's extremely frustrating, because like you're definitely not in a good place, Ketra, and I like
yeah.
Yeah, I just love that.
That's a good point, though, April. Yeah, like, Adora got hers, and now it's Ketra's turn. But also, like, Adora had a very different relationship with Shadow Weaver, right? Like, she was always praised. She was always treated special. So her letting go of Shadow Weaver is a lot easier. Ketra, like, it makes sense that she would still want her around and still talk to her and go out of her way to visit her, because her relationship is so much sadder and so much more fraught with like her own sense of identity, and Shadow Weaver's very much wrapped up in that. So
yeah, she's still seeking her approval.
Totally.
Whereas Adora already got it.
That's why she's giving her updates, right? Like, Hordak thinks I'm doing great. His words, not mine. It's like, under that, it's basically her saying like, "Are you proud of me, Mom? Like, did I finally do good enough for you?"
But it's also like really like I just don't think that it's very good mentally to like continue to like seek that from someone who's obviously not going to give it to you. Like
totally.
Like, especially because like she immediately walks into the cell and she's just like, "Oh, like, are you joining me in this cell? Like, because you're such a failure?" I was like, wow.
I mean, again, Ketra doesn't realize at this point. I don't think Ketra has the ability right now to realize that this is unhealthy. She's very deep into it, But Alex, you were gonna say something?
Well, I think you guys have touched on like the deeper parts of this. But I'll just say, like, on a superficial level, it also just feels like this is the first time that Catra finally is higher on the power structure than Shadow Weaver, and she wants to take advantage of that. And like finally, after like years of like keeping down her true feelings towards Shadow Weaver, like she finally has the upper hand and is able to like just show up and be like, "You'll be here rotting, you suck." Like, but now she finally has the ability to do that without retribution, and she's like taking it. She feels like she needs to take advantage of this while she has that power. And so obviously there's like deeper stuff there that you guys have already touched on. But I think like on the superficial level, like that's what she's saying. Like, I need to like push this in her face now that I finally have this.
Yeah, totally. I also find it really interesting how throughout the entire season, Catra's always like, "Oh, you guys are so easily manipulated. You guys are so easily manipulated." And yet she's the one who is so easily manipulated by Shadow Weaver.
Achilles heel.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, wow. But yeah, so we finished that episode and we're going to the next one is with Bo finding out, because they were able to get, the whole point was of Bo's plan was to be able to capture one of the bots so he could study it. Mm-hmm. And they finally did. They worked together. They all glowed. The forest is healing itself. It's all great. Power friendship. Woo. And he finally gets it, and he opens it up and finds out that they're using First One's tech, and that's what makes him theorize and trapped as alive. Well,
can I just say, like, that at the end of that episode is great, because like it's them like curing Frosta's hand or whatever. It's like, no princess left behind, and like you know, like all smiles, and then we cut to Bo be like, wait a minute, Entrapped is alive.
We left her behind.
Yeah, and then the delivery, like the sadness that like washes over him, like, and we left her behind. Like, but Bo's voice actor does great work in that like final scene, and just like the hard cut from like the happiness of the princesses to Bo figuring out the sad truth. It's like it's a great way to end that episode.
Yeah. I think Bo, and especially his voice actor, are great for those like one-line things that just set the mood of sadness. Because we see that in the second episode also, when he goes like, "That was you," when Entrapped like reveals that she was the one messing with it. So he's really like he nails it when it comes to those like very short lines that tell you exactly what the mood is of the show. But I also love that he said that he's like using a recorder, because he said the best scientist he ever knew used it, which was Entrapped. And I was like, that was so sweet of Bo. Like, I love this kind of parallel that Bo recognizes how much of a genius Entrapped is, but then you have Hordak not like very like frustrated, not trying to admit it. I am not letting this Hordak Entrapped thing go. I will not.
Good for you, Beatriz.
It begins here, doesn't it?
It does.
It does with the bots. It does with the bots, where he's impressed that she's got these bots there that can take on the princesses, and it's like, there it is. But let's move on to episode 2, which is Ties That Bind. This episode split up into basically 2 storylines. We have the A plot, which is that Glimmer and Bo they're on the way to try and save Entrapta, and also trying to confirm whether she's alive or not. They do confirm that, but then things go wrong, because Glimmer is again emotional, like very emotional, and like decides to punch them when she thinks that they're hurting Entrapta. They end up taking Catra with them when they try to escape, and then they take her hostage. And then you have the B plot, which is Adora and Swiftwind go into this. Light Hope gives them a mission to try and rebuild a watchtower that can help her fix herself and work better. So let's focus on this A plot, which is the most interesting of the 2, in my opinion. I think there's a lot here that I wanted coming into season 2. The most important thing that I wanted, which is Glimmer and Catra together interacting with no Adora in the picture. And it's so, not only is it really fun, because Catra as a hostage, of course, is so annoying. She bites. We get a confirmation. She likes to bite.
Licks. Oh, she's like a cat. Licks. Got
it. Like a cat, she's the ultimate troll.
She's the ultimate troll. She licks. She bites. She also she has great hearing, because she learns about Glimmer's magic and learns that it's limited. So she does all the trouble she can to force Glimmer to use all her magic up. And yeah, so it's just this really interesting, it's a lot of shenanigans, it's a lot of fun, and fun stuff ensues while she's trying to really annoy Bo and Glimmer to the best of her abilities, which is she's really good at. And then we get this one moment, because for the entirety of it, she's very much in control. She's never once nervous around Beau and Glimmer. She absolutely underestimates them. And then Glimmer says this. She says, Adora didn't run away from the Horde. She ran away from you. And that is the one moment that Ketra, like, she loses control. She suddenly, all the cool she loses. And that's when we start getting this very interesting kind of interaction. She goes like, you think she's not going to leave you behind too, Sparkles? She then goes like, you and Adora are perfect for each other. Because again, easily manipulated, all that stuff. And it's like, it's like Glimmerdora, but also Catradora. It's like this great kind of exploration of these two relationships and these parallels of these two relationships, but without the very person they're talking about, without Adora, the key figure. Because whenever Adora's around, she kind of takes over when it comes to with both characters. So what did you think of finally seeing these two interact? And is it all you hoped for? Did you wish there was more to that? Did you hope? Tell me, just give me your thoughts, Alex.
It was great. I mean, like, this is exactly what Glimmer has been built up to be so far. Like, a person who, like, gets annoyed really easily. And, like, the way they animated her throughout this episode, like, all the faces, just, like, try to, like, hold it together, and just, she can't do it. But, like, then it builds up to that scene you mentioned where she just, like, blows up. And she, like, pushes in her face, like, the toxic environment that Adora was running from, and Catra does not want to take responsibility for that. It's like pushing it towards, like, Adora's going to abandon you too soon, but, like, not really wanting to take her not wanting to take into account, like, what her behavior, like, did to Adora throughout her life. So, like, all of Glimmer and Catra is great. Like, all the funny moments, all the emotional moments, like, down to, like, that end part, which is a little cliche of, like, well, you're a good guy, so you're not gonna hurt me, I know it, and, like, Beau convincing Glimmer not to do it. So, like, but like, that still feels very, very strong, like, you know, showing the contrast and just how the different sides work. So I loved all of Catra Glimmer interaction here.
Gotcha. What about you, April?
I loved it as well. Like, just the way that their personalities play off. And then I think it's just really, like, interesting and unique because, like, Catra's clearly, like, playing like them the entire time. But then, like, the other side of it too is that Catra's been, like, I guess, sort of, like, mentally, like, manipulating them. And then, like, right at the end, like, Glimmer just, like, throws it right back at her with the whole, like, she didn't run away from the Horde, she ran away from you. Like, I was like, I had to stop and have a moment like, whoo, girl, like, that was rough. Like, well, exactly, too. Like, that's the thing. Like, I like that you get to see, like, it's gonna sound really bad, but, like, there's, like a spark to Glimmer, because, like, she's, like, super but for real, like, she's very, like, an optimistic character, you know, very, like, bright and sparkly. But, like, for her to just be like to know exactly what to say to get to Catra, like, she's been holding back, and I love that. Like, I want her to, like, snap more because it's great. And if she needs to just hang around Catra all the time for that to happen, like, okay, let's do this. But I did, like, I really enjoyed it. Just, like, so much fun and, like, very engaging for, like, me as an audience member.
Gotcha. Michelle, what about you?
One thing I actually really appreciated about Glimmer this episode was she more than Beau was very willing to kind of stoop to Catra's level.
Yeah.
And she shows that in a number of ways that increasingly alarm Beau to the point where, like, when she goes back to, like, punch him after hearing about Entrapta, I was honestly curious, like, Glimmer, are you gonna, like, cross the line and do something really morally gray? And she did, and it's probably, like, good at this point, but the fact that she's more likely to do that, I think, super interesting, and I wonder if that's a thing that might be picked up later. Like, if Glimmer was put in a pretty desperate situation where she could choose to do a thing that's objectively bad, but feels really good to her in the moment, would she do it? Like, I wonder.
Right. What would happen if Beau wasn't there?
Yeah. What if Beau's the one in trouble? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because, like, do you think, like, I don't know, would Adora hold her back the way Bo would. You know,
Yeah, I don't
if
know.
if Bo was the one missing and not Adora, and it's just the two of them, how would that play? Yeah, Bo's becoming very much the moral compass of the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. We also get something really exciting. We see Adora present, but we don't see her. Something that happens this episode that's really interesting. I feel like this is really the start of how we start seeing the Scorpia and her feelings for Catra really start to showcase. I mean, we kind of see the hints of it in season 1. We sort of see it in the first episode, but this is the one where we really start this kind of arc with Scorpia and this kind of trajectory that we start to take with her, because she finds out that Catra's missing and she freaks out and she calls her like a beautiful genius. And
Yes, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like if she didn't care, she would have just said genius. But no, she was like, no, she's a beautiful genius. That hints at attraction, everybody. Just pointing it out.
Yeah, you're right. 'Cause she's not just like scared of her being gone. She's like beside herself with worry. And that's like a very big difference.
It is. And then we get this kind of hostage situation between Scorpia and Bo and Glimmer. And it is really interesting how we do get this very clear kind of throughout the episode. We get this kind of theme of like, what is morally right? What's morally wrong? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? There's a very clear line. And I think this was really well done, because that's when we learn about Entrap, the crossing sides. It becomes that much more devastating, because throughout the entire episode, we're saying, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys, we're the good guys, this is how we're supposed to be. Good guys would never do this. And here you have someone who used to be a good guy so flippantly switch sides. And like the hurt that both Bo and Glimmer get, I mean, A+ on the animation there, because it's so subtle. It's very subtle. And, you know, sometimes like you won't see, they won't have the care to actually make that kind of very subtlety, that subtle animation. They won't care for that, but they do put in the effort, and you really it really hits you.
Yeah, specifically like while Entrapta is talking, like Glimmer like can't bear to watch, and she just like turns to the side, and then we have a shot of like her looking at the ground, like her face darkened. So like all that like hits really hard, and especially because at the beginning of the episode, like it's talking about how like we left her there, and like that's why she's kidnapped, because we didn't go back for her. So like now it's hitting her. They're like, wait, so she switched sides because we didn't go back to her, and so now she feels like that extra guilt is being added on. I kind of wish we dug into that a little more in subsequent episodes, but like even in that moment, you get that sense like that's what's dawning over Glimmer. Like it's like she feels like it's their fault that trapped to switch sides, that they lost her to the Horde.
Well, I think I think it's even more interesting too that like I mean, I totally understand where Bo and Glimmer are coming from too, but Entrapta even says like, oh, I have way more like access to like, so it's not even like that she switched sides. She's just like, oh, I'm gonna stay here because I simply have access to more things that I want and need. And so it's not like, I think that probably would hurt the worst. Like if even that's the realization, is that it's not because they left her, because she doesn't seem to be really fazed by that. It's the fact that she's like just choosing to stay, like, and that she's not being held captive. She's like, yeah, but like I've made so many advances in my work, and like I think that's probably even harder for them to hear too, is because like it's not that she's like, oh well, I think princesses are bad now, even though I am one, but she's just like, I'm just staying here because I've chosen that. Like, I mean, they're letting me just essentially, like, they're just letting her like explore her like scientific like nature, and so and not that like, I guess like the, you know, like Glimmer and Bo and all, you know, all of the other princesses.
But April, it is that though, because they were, since they met her, they're like, well, you can't mess around with First Wind's tech, like that's too dangerous.
That's
like
true.
The fact that the Horde is willing to let her with no restraints explore any avenue of science that she wants is what made her stay.
Yeah.
And that's something that the rebels could never offer her. And I think Glimmer knows that. And that's what, like you're saying,
or
the actor who said
it's not even that like they never offered her. I was gonna say it's not even that they never offered her. They just straight out denied her. They were like, no, you can't.
Yeah, they wouldn't let her.
that makes even more like, oh, they should feel really bad. It's their fault.
and Entrapta like says like the Horde has been so supportive and like that like got it.
They have not been that.
Okay, well, question. Okay, because here's something that was very interesting that I caught was when she said, oh, like, when I breached, I don't know the name, what was the name of the stone?
The Black Garnet.
The Black Garnet. She was like, oh, when I did experiments on the Black Garnet. And then Bo says, that was you. But that moment was when Ketra shuts off the transmission. So then the question comes, does Entrapta realize the harm of her experiments?
No, absolutely not.
Very chaotic.
Like,
neutral.
is she, like, is that gonna be the arc for her? That's gonna be, like, throughout, I'm not just talking about in the next batch, I'm talking about throughout the entire season. Is she gonna become kind of like with, like, the, like, you know, like the Manhattan experiment thing, where it's like, oh, you create the atom bomb, but now you're like, oh, goodness, like, what did I just do? So it's kind of like, well, with her, she's kind of very closed off. Does she not realize? Because, you know, we see it in later in the season, we see her have, like, moral dilemma of, like, she's talking to herself of, do I go into Hordak's lab or not? Moral dilemma. She has morals. Does she listen to them? No, because she still ends up going to the lab. But she does have these conversations with herself. So my question is, does she even realize? Like, yeah, they're supporting her, but does she have an idea of what they're being used? Like, I don't know.
I think
not
like
really.
Yes and no. And I think that the reason why, like, I feel like it's a yes and no because, like, it's yes because we have evidence of her, like, watching, like, for instance, her bots fighting the other princesses. Yeah. But I also think it's, like, a no because when they brought up the whole Black Garnet thing, I don't think she realized what she was doing, like, caused that much devastation. And I think that's because the Horde chose not to tell her about that. Because they saw no reason to. Because it benefited them. And so I think that's going to be, like, it would be interesting to see her come to more and more realizations as to, like, what she's doing and how it's impacting. Versus, like, and I think that hopefully it would be nice to see her, like, I guess be like, oh, what I'm doing is not okay. Like, I'm enjoying it, but it's also not okay kind of thing. But, like, it's going to have to come from her, like, seeing more of like the effects of whatever it is that she's creating.
Yeah, I see that. Do you guys think that the reveal and, like, them realizing that she switched sides was revealed too soon? It was only episode 2. Like, I remember when I started watching the show, I noticed, like, I read the title names and I saw that the title name of episode 7 was Reunion. So I for a second thought, oh, that's when Entrapta's gonna come unite with them again. That's when they're not unite necessarily, like, switch back, but I mean that they're gonna see her again is at that moment. So I'm just curious, do you think it was too soon? Did you want this kind of drama to be extended a little bit more and have that realization of that betrayal be felt not just with Bo, because again, we didn't see Adora react to it. We just had Bo and Glimmer being like, we have a lot to catch you up on. And we didn't see how Mermista, Perfuma, all the original crew that went and lost her, we didn't see how they reacted. We don't see how they react to this betrayal. So what did you like that it was so early on and they kind of fixed it, got it over with? Or did you want to see it kind of expanded upon a bit more?
I'm happy where it happened because, like, the actual Entrapta being taken to the Horde happened, like, midway through season 1. So I feel like we've already had enough of Entrapta being separated from the crew that, like, it felt like a good time beginning of season 2 to, like introduce Entrapta again into the rebellion's mindset, like, reminding, like, hey, Entrapta's alive, by the way. Like, we as the audience knew that, but, like, now we're allowing you to know that. So I think that's fine, and I do think that the season touches a little bit on Entrapta with in the rest of the season, like with Adora talking about, like, losing people in their previous battles in episode 4 or whatever. So I do think that it gets touched upon at least, even if we don't see their immediate reactions to the news. So I think that's fine.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it was appropriately, like, placed as well, specifically because we already had, I guess, the drama of it. And just like Alex said, you know, like we've already been kind of doing this for half of a season. And so like, I guess us kind of coming to this conclusion and sort of getting it out of the way, like it doesn't like hurt it in any way for me. And I think that if they probably would have carried it on for a lot longer, then I probably would have gotten frustrated. So for that, I'm thankful.
All right. So speaking about, we finish with that. We get this B plot with the episode. This is like the final thing to talk about, which is Light Hope gives Adora and Swiftwind a mission to repair a tower that Mara destroyed. Adora finally opens up to Swiftwind about Mara and the pressure of not making those same mistakes. And after not being able to work together, they're able to work together to like fix the watchtower, and their sacred bond is forged. So, and also Swiftwind apologizes for not taking the mission seriously. I don't think that's what he needs to apologize for, personally.
Wow.
But I think he needs to just apologize for, because I don't know, I'm just thinking, like, I thought it was really sweet when he says, like, no, you gave me a voice. I would never want to go back from that. I thought, okay, that's, like, really sweet, and that's, like, really powerful for Adora to have given him a voice, and then him now making, like, I don't know, I sometimes when the social justice warrior becomes, like, the butt of the joke, sometimes that rubs me the wrong way sometimes. And I feel like that's what Swiftwind is becoming. You know, he's all about horses. But, yeah, so it's kind of, I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I being too harsh on Swiftwind?
Well, I'll say that your take of the social justice war, that was more of an issue at the end of season 1, because they did a lot of jokes about like for liberation of the proletariat, sort of the kind of jokes. But like in this episode, I think, forgive me if this is like the wrong comparison, but like, is this not like a very similar dynamic to Glimmer and Frosta in the first episode? Like over the top, eager person trying to help a more mature person who's like very focused on their thing. Like it's the same dynamic. It's just this time it's a horse and Adora instead of two princesses. So like to me, like I get the annoyance, because like my initial thought is, oh, this is getting very close to Shrek Donkey like dynamic. So like I get that can be annoying, but like at the same time, I don't think it's that much worse than like a dynamic you had in just the episode right before it.
But I mean, doesn't it get tiresome though? We just got it.
Sure,
like, we just
sure.
had like the same, and it's the same resolution. It's the same thing.
Right. I just don't think it's as bad. I don't think it's like significantly worse. Like it's kind of on the same level. It's just like
kind of worse because it's a horse instead of a child.
Wow,
so
horses!
like,
wow, just like anti-horses.
I'm just saying and also he's been her horse for longer. He's been Swiftwind for a lot longer. I mean, I don't know. I mean, granted, Frost has been a queen for long too. So I don't know. I just think I'm just trying to figure out a way for Swiftwind to not be as annoying as he is.
I think the other thing with like Swiftwind is that there's not as much of him in the show, and like, yeah. and I think maybe like some of my frustrations with it come from like the same place with like the whole Glimmer and Frosta situation, is because we spend this time on this like situation, and then we don't really like circle back to it or check in on it or anything like that, because the whole point of them going on this mission and everything is that so they're supposed to have a better bond. But really at the end of it, they don't really bond all that much more. Like all that really happens is that Adora, like we get more of Adora's like feeling the pressures and like not wanting to make mistakes and all of this stuff, and then like we get like Swiftwind like saying like, oh, I'm just sorry I didn't take the mission seriously, and then that's kind of like it. Like, and we don't go back to like how is Adora and Swiftwind's relationship, and even though like Swiftwind, obviously, I mean, he's not my most favorite character, but like the fact that we just don't sort of like, even like we spend time on something and then we don't check back in on it is just really like annoying. Because if I don't know, I hate spending time on things. It's like wasted time almost.
Right.
And I hate wasting time, especially like when again like we only got half of this season. So if maybe like later on in the season, like we revisit it, then that's great and that's totally fine. But as it stands right now, like, why did we include it?
Light Hope at the beginning of this episode says, as She-Ra, your sacred connection with your steed is important. Since when has that been a thing?
Yeah,
Since when?
exactly.
All right, Michelle, do you not think that She-Ra should have had a dragon instead of a horse?
Dragon
Yes.
would have been way cooler.
It would have. Yes, it would have. Give me your thoughts of Swiftwind. Where do you fall in this kind of opinion?
I mean, I guess like his being really annoying and overeager is. We get an explanation at the end where he's like, "Oh, it's just like super excited to be this important role for you, and I'm excited for all the cool stuff we're gonna do together." But if we see more of him just like being kind of obnoxious, I guess the thing that bugs me is like he seems like an adult horse.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a lot to be insecure about. So why is he so worried about stuff all the time and trying to deal with that by being like extra a lot?
Yeah.
Like I'd rather he be like a wise, thoughtful, helpful force for Adora versus like someone that they have to like make feel. And I don't think like they've really followed up on that so much, like him feeling inadequate or whatever. Because he's like there in meetings now. He flies around. He says little one-liners, but that's like kind of it. I'm not sure we like, unless he's like gonna actually be super helpful, I don't see why we need more of him except to have like a different kind of voice in the trio, which like again, I don't know if we need that either. But that's like what he is, so that's why I'm not crazy about him. But
Yeah.
if they're gonna decide to do something else with him that's better, then like that's fine. I hope they do. But like April saying, like, we don't get any resolution. I kind of like, as much as like resolution sounds nice, but I don't really want to see more of him. So like, hey, if they don't bring him back anytime
I'm
soon.
going to be so frustrated.
Well, here's the thing. Well, in defense of Swiftwind, there is something nice about having someone who is lighthearted and very warm versus, because I feel like sometimes someone who's like the sage, the wise one, if he were a wise steed, then I feel like he might be a little cold. And I feel like what Adora needs isn't someone who's wise, but someone who is all about fun so that she can relax sometimes. So I feel like maybe like, even though he is, I feel like if they just dial him back, just same with Prosta, just dial it back a little bit, then maybe it would be a little bit more, you know, I could get through it better. I mean, I did wish that when he went, is it me? When Adora was like,
yes!
I wanted her to say yes! So then he'd be like, oh, okay, I'll get better. You know, like, I know that would have been mean and that's not Adora's thing, but like, Ketra would have said yes.
Okay.
She would have been like, yes, it's you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I understand why he needs to be the way he is in terms of just for the sake of Adora. I understand why there is a need for someone for her, just like Glimmer like I don't necessarily think Glimmer needs someone who is super happy-go-lucky like Frosta, but I feel like Adora does.
Bo. She's already got Bo. He's her
Yeah.
happy-go-lucky.
But I mean, not just that's true. She does have Bo.
Yeah.
You're right.
Well, I was
She
gonna
does have
say,
Bo.
and the rest of the characters, like in this show, are a good enough mixture of like serious and like I guess happy-go-lucky. So it seems like super out of place to just have like one character who is just extremely happy-go-lucky. So, and I think that's the other thing too, is that like even like. I mean, like, Bo can be very serious, but he's also, like, very, like, fun, and he has a lot of really good one-liners, and even Glimmer is, like, she's serious, but she's also a lot of fun, like, all of them are kind of that way, and so it just seems like, okay, if we have, like, all of these really good characters already, like, why did you feel the need to have, like, this extremely happy-go-lucky person? Like, I feel like if he had been, like, another good mixture of, like, you know, like serious, like the wise, but also like kind of funny. Like that would have been extremely
Different.
extremely different. And I think that would have been better placed versus just like completely like one-sided in terms of personality.
Yeah,
I have a brain thought. I feel like Swiftwind exudes the same energy as Hawkmoth, But unlike Hawkmoth is constantly kind of put in his place when he like is alive in a way that humanizes him and actually makes like all of his like extraness work in his favor. Swiftwind doesn't get any of that, so he's just extra all the time and nobody's checking him down, and that's like what's more aggravating about his character.
So Swift.
I mean, I don't know who
to put him down.
I don't know who Hawkmoth is. I was like, Hawkeye? Hawkeye? Is that what you're talking about? Hawkeye.
Think about being cool this season.
But I do agree, April, what you said. You're right, because the wise one that we have is the queen. She's really the wise one of the group, and she's not there. She's not there a lot. I think she was only in the first episode. Like, we didn't see anything of her.
That was it. And so, like, you're really missing that sort of, like, wise element, which is also something that I feel that Adora needs right now.
Yeah.
More than anything. Like, she doesn't necessarily need... Like, it's nice that she has, like, all of these great and, like, happy friends who are, like, positive.
She needs parents.
Yeah, but she needs guidance. And I don't think that she's getting that from Light Hope. And I feel like the best place she could have gotten that from might have been Swiftwind, which would have made the relationship that much more meaningful.
Yeah.
But because, like, this is what we decided to do with Swiftwind, like, he's almost useless to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's nice that she can ride around on him in battle, but if that's all we're gonna do with him, like, don't spend time on, like, his character. Like, just make
sacred bond.
I will say, okay, well, I agree. Not like you've fully convinced me that he should have been like a wise one type character. You fully convinced me. But speaking of the sacred bond, she opens up to him about Mara, but then she opens up to everybody else, like in episode 4 in the D&D pod. I mean, isn't that the same? Like, even though she opened up to him, she didn't really, like, grow, like, she's still struggling with it. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean, like, okay, it has to be one and done. And it's slightly different anxiety. This is her freaking out about Mara, and in the other one, she's freaking out about losing her friends. Mm-hmm. So it is slightly different anxiety, but usually when you open up to someone, you do feel slightly better.
Yeah.
Well,
or even like if you open up to someone, generally like they're gonna offer, again, going back to like he should have been like a slightly wise one character, is generally they're gonna offer some type of advice, if not to completely fix it, but to like put things into better perspective for you. And like she didn't even get like that type of resolution out of opening up to him. Just like just him apologizing for not being serious. And it's okay. I don't think that's what she necessarily needed in that moment either. I think it feels like she's trying to find someone to, like, I don't know. Like, she's trying to find someone to help support her in her struggles.
I'll just say, like, Swiftwind tries, at least in this moment, because, like, when Adora admits that, like, she's like... Yeah, because Adora is like admitting like she wants to learn how to control her powers to not hurt people, and she ruined everything. And then like she tries to shift the conversation to Swiftwind, being like, "I'm sorry, I made you alive." But Swiftwind is like, "No, like I like the ability to be able to help people. Like that's the thing that I don't want to go back from." And that's like I think that's meant in that conversation to affect Adora. Like Adora has these powers at the end of the day to help people, and that's also something Swiftwind focused on in the end of last season when like Adora was getting all this propaganda from Light Hope of like, no, you must cut off your connections. Swiftwind is the one who shows up to be like, that's stupid. Like you have powers, help your friends. Like that's a totally noble thing to do and something you should do if you have that ability. And so Swiftwind here is like doing the same. It's admittedly the same thing, but like it's still an important thing to remind Adora when she's in that vulnerable moment of like, I don't want to hurt people. But Swiftwind is there to remind her, like, even though you have that fear, but like, don't forget all the benefits that you can do because of you having this power, and make that your goal, like the positives of your actions and not the potential negatives.
See, I forgot that he was the one who helped her. I forgot that he had been the one who helped her in season 1.
That's true. And I'll just say, just jumping off of that, like, I feel like his thing at the end is he's saying, like, I'm so excited to be your steed, because he's kind of pointing out, like, look, like, we're both new with these new roles we've now been assigned, and it's kind of scary new territory for both of us, but we can lean on each other to figure that out because we already have this connection. So like, it would have been cool if he could have been wiser and like given her more advice. But he's kind of like, yeah, like I don't really know either. Like this is all new to me too. I could see that being his way of like kind of trying to put her at ease. Like, look, like at least like I'm also going through the same new thing as you are in my own way.
Yeah, that's also nice to have someone going through it. I feel like maybe if they didn't play, because in the beginning it kind of seemed like she was annoyed by him. So I feel like
well, she is, because like that's the whole point of like their relationship up to that point, is like just showing the contrast of like Adora being super focused and like really like clenching up in terms of like, I need to fix this, and Swiftwind is all the way under her side. It's like, well, let's take this smoothly, let's not like get too stressed about it. And they're just like on opposite sides of like how to deal with this situation.
He's not saying let's take this smoothly. He's saying let's do loop-de-loops.
Right, but that's what he's doing.
I'm just saying, if he was being like, there's just, I feel like we're painting like these very exaggerated versions of Swiftwind, one who's like being really chill and one who's being very obnoxious. And I'm like, it's in the middle. He's in the middle. And I understand why he needs to be the way he is. I just wish, I don't know. Through this entire conversation, I have lost any sense of who Swiftwind is.
Does anyone really know who Swiftwind is?
Does anyone know
Swiftwind
who
is a
is
horse.
Oh,
there you go.
I thought we were just talking about a weather front moving through. Now I'm even more confused.
So that was the plot. Anything to add about this B plot that you want to talk about? Anything to add?
No.
I think we're good. Okay, we've talked enough about the B plot.
The word watchtower.
Yes, the watchtower. Which also, by the way, like, why was that just a place that no one knew about, or was that
with just floating debris in the air, like?
I feel like, but no one found it through, like, Bo's, like, transmission of, like, trying to find First One Tech, or Entrapta trying to find things. I just think that watchtower is now a place, it's now going to be noticeable. Like, now people are going to know about it, I feel. Yeah. Especially now that it is, like, up and running. It's a source of energy. So people are going to be aware of it. So I don't know if this is the last time we're going to see this watchtower.
Swiftwind is important because he gives us the crew as ponies, right? Like we got Shadow Weaver pony.
Oh, that's right.
Ponies.
I really like Shadow Weaver pony. I think she's
the hair is so funny on Shadow Weaver pony.
All right. Well, that last question before we finish off. Where do you rank these episodes in comparison to the rest of the season? Like, for me, for instance, I'll go first. For me, I want to say they're the bottom two. I've enjoyed the other ones better. And that's not to say they're bad episodes. Just in comparison to the other episodes, they're kind of in the bottom. But if I had to compare them to the entirety of She-Ra, they'd be kind of more in the middle.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
I would put them more in, like, the middle / lower, I guess, section of my ranking, at least for this season, because there's definitely episodes like coming up that are way more interesting, and like, but like in the again, like, I agree with you, they're not bad episodes, it's just that like there's better episodes in the season. So like
Gotcha. What about you, Michelle?
I would put the first one towards the bottom, and I'd put the second one at least like in the middle, if not like inching towards the top, maybe, but definitely not like the top, like the 75%, whatever that is.
Gotcha. What about you, Alex?
I think after talking this through, I think episode 1 is like third to last. There are like 2 episodes I like less than that one. And then episode 2, I think it's third best. Like I still think that it's doing a lot of emotional things on like both the Catra Glimmer side, but also the Adora Swiftwind side. So like I think that it's balanced enough that I think it's like one of the better episodes of this season.
Okay, awesome. I like this variety of like opinions. This is all great. All right, well, that does it for us. You can find out all the April, did you go? Yes, you
Yes.
went, right? Yes. Okay. Well, for a second, I was like, did
Let
I
me
skip
go
someone?
again.
Did you change your
All right.
mind after hearing
Yeah,
us?
change your
I
mind.
did, actually. I've decided they're the best episodes ever. All
Yeah, yeah.
I see. We've learned that Swiftwind is the greatest character of all time.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes. yes.
Team Swiftwind all of the way. Can't get enough
Team-
of those weather fronts.
Team Swifty. I don't know.
Oh
Those
no.
weather fronts, though.
All right. So find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord. You can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Lily, aka Panda Lily. And thanks as always to our Patreon executive producers, Ryan, Steve, Alex, Beatriz, Hugh, and Michael. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.